family law lawyer and mother of a 2-year-old, Alana gave up her practice to focus on her health. Since that time, she's had multiple lines of cancer treatment and has been involved in several clinical trials. Alana is currently receiving treatment as part of a clinical trial at Princess Margaret Hospital, and she now spends a lot of her time raising awareness and fundraising for ovarian cancer. So please join me in welcoming Alana to share her experiences throughout this journey.
Good morning. I have to start by just mentioning a couple of things that you mentioned, Bob. One is, I tried to get onto a very similar trial to the one that you're on. I think Avastin is an awesome drug, so whoever was involved with that, kudos to you. Two, the jackhammer sounds like really, really good therapy, so I'd like to borrow it. And three, last summer, I picked up a Vespa. And I now own one, and I drive it all over in the summer, and I love it. It was on my bucket list. My parents weren't thrilled, but you know, I guess when you play the C card, you're allowed to do a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't have been allowed to do otherwise. So there are a couple of things I want to talk about. I'll talk first about my history with cancer. As Sheila mentioned, I was diagnosed 6 years ago. I was going through fertility treatments trying to have a second child for what they dubbed unexplained secondary infertility, which I've now come to understand just means they don't know why you can't get pregnant, so we'll just try whatever we can try and let's keep going. At the time, all of my doctors knew that my mother had tested positive for BRCA1. So they knew the mutation ran in my family. There was no reason for me not to be getting pregnant, but nobody ever thought about ovarian cancer. Just wasn't on the radar screen. I was being screened for breast cancer. I started my mammograms at age 30. I was going to be seen every 6 months by a breast cancer specialist. Nobody even mentioned ovarian cancer to me. In the course of the fertility treatments, my fertility doctor saw what she thought were cysts and went in to aspirate them because she couldn't shrink them by giving me the pill. Obviously, when they took the fluid out, it was sent to pathology, and when it came back, there it was. So 4 days later, I was at Princess Margaret Hospital in the gynecological oncology department with Dr. Barry Rosen, who is awesome, just by the way. And a few weeks later, I had my first surgery. I had a laparotomy in which they discovered that the cancer had spread up to my diaphragm, down to the pelvic floor. They removed my omentum. They gave me a full, complete radical, I don't know the right word, but full hysterectomy. And then when I woke up, my doctor wasn't there because he actually had to catch a flight to Turkey. He had thought that the surgery would be about 2 hours. He said, oh, you're 32, it's probably, you know, low stage or borderline, you don't really have to worry. Well, he had to leave my surgery and let the other surgeon close me up because while he was able to do the debulking, he had this flight to catch. It ended up being 7 hours. When I woke up, I was told that I had stage 3C ovarian cancer and I had to start chemotherapy. So, thanks to people like you, I was the first person in Canada to receive intraperitoneal chemotherapy for ovarian cancer, which extends life expectancy by 2 years, according to the studies that were done at the time. Unlike Bob's experience, the antiemetics did not work for me. I had a very rough time in chemo. I stayed in bed for about 5 to 7 days after each treatment, and I actually put on about 25 pounds. So there's the cosmic balance of weight working for you. Lots of steroids and what have you. And basically the only thing that made me feel better when I was nauseous was McDonald's, which if you know me, I never eat McDonald's. But at 11 o'clock at night, my husband was going out to get me that Big Mac because it's the only thing that made me feel better. So I lost my hair, I got fat, but the treatment worked. So I had started the treatment in October of 2005, and in April of 2006, I was told that I was cured. And I say that in quotations because I now understand that in ovarian cancer cancer, you don't talk about cure, you talk about NED, no evidence of disease. So I had no evidence of disease. And this continued until December of 2006 when my CA125 started rising, the tumor marker in my blood. So we started looking at what I was going to do, and we waited for the CAT scan for the tumors to show, because I now understand, I've learned a lot of medical stuff, by the way. I now understand for ovarian cancer recurrences, it doesn't matter if you treat early or late, that survival and the benefits of treatment are the same either way, so we preserve quality of life. So we waited for tumors to show. And they started showing in the spring of 2007, and that's when I tried my first clinical trial. I think it was an AstraZeneca. It was an anti-angiogenic. It was not Avastin, unfortunately. And I did not do well on that clinical trial. The side effects were not great, to say the least. I was pretty much confined to my home. And while there was a short-term spike where it seemed to be working, it then stopped. So in the summer of 2007, the day before my wedding anniversary, I started my second line of chemo. We switched the drugs a little bit, and while I didn't lose my hair, I can't say that I tolerated it any better. So I had 4 treatments, and then I had a second debulking surgery. November 21st, 2007. So at the time, I had tumors on my liver and my spleen. So my doctor went in to remove my spleen, and when he went to check my liver, the term that he used, and I don't really understand it for soft tissue, but he said my liver shattered. At which point they called in the liver transplant specialist at Toronto General, and my surgery turned into a 2-day surgery because they couldn't stop the bleeding, 45 units of blood, and a 9-day coma. The recovery from that was a little slower. It was a little harder. My daughter at the time was 4. She didn't quite understand why she couldn't speak to mommy for 2.5 weeks when I told her that I was going into the hospital for 4 days. But we got through that, and then I continued with 5 more chemotherapies on that line. I then got down to NED, no evidence of disease. Yay! And I figured, okay, I've had my recurrence. I've done what I needed to do. I'm good. I'm done. Like, this is enough. I've had to give up work. I've had to give up my family, which I planned on having 4 kids. And I said, we're done. But we weren't. And I had my 3rd recurrence. And at that point, I actually tried to get onto a trial very similar to what Bob is doing with temsirolimus and Avastin. I think it was a slightly different protocol. I didn't qualify because of the previous anti-angiogenic that I had done. So at this point, I was actually being treated by Dr. Oza because we were looking for a clinical trial, so I had moved into the clinical trial department. But because of where the tumors were at, we decided to go back to chemo. So I did my 3rd line of chemo. We did 6 treatments, and this time I didn't get down to NED. I got down to stable disease. So I now had mets on my liver and in my lungs. And the way the CAT scan reports read are there's this lesion on the liver, there's that lesion on the liver, and there are many nodules in the lungs. They don't even count them. I don't know how many there are. I don't want to know. They're there. So I had my summer from when I finished chemo and I seemed to be sort of stable. And on my bucket list, I took my daughter to Israel. And I said to my husband, I got the clearance that I could travel. I said, I want to be the one to take her. It was something very important to me. 3 weeks later, we were on the plane. Awesome. In the fall, my numbers started rising again. The tumors started growing again. So I tried a clinical trial. I tried another anti-angiogenic. And while the side effects were better, the same sort of thing happened. I had a short spike where I seemed to be responding, and then I was not. So I came off of that clinical trial, and I started a new clinical trial. And this clinical trial involved a PARP inhibitor. For 2.5 years, I was following the development of olaparib and AstraZeneca. For 2.5 years, every appointment, whether it was with Dr. Rosen or Dr. Oza, I said, I want the PARP inhibitor. Get it for me. Do what you can. was available. I called everybody that I knew. They called everybody that they knew. We must have knocked on the doors of every department at AstraZeneca. Whoever here, by the way, is here from AstraZeneca. It's very difficult, and I noticed that you're talking about market access. I couldn't get the drug, and it was the drug that I was waiting for. Because I am BRCA positive, I've since been tested, and the PARP inhibitor was found to be active. I knew the only way I was going to get it was on a clinical trial, because it wasn't going to be available generally until the clinical trial phase testing was done. So finally, about 4 months ago, I got onto a trial that involves low-dose cyclophosphamide and a PARP inhibitor. The Abbott PARP, not the AstraZeneca, but a PARP inhibitor. And knock on wood and all the rest of it and cross your fingers, it seems to be working. So I seem to be having a slow process where the tumors are getting smaller. There was another complication. As a result of coming off of the previous clinical trial, I developed a pleural effusion. So this summer was really crappy, and I spent most of the summer in bed, not able to breathe, but I'm doing much better, as you can see. And I'm now doing this clinical trial, and we're very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that the PARP inhibitor is going to be the drug that's going to work for me because of the mutation that I have. So what does all of this mean? I was at the hospital a week and a half ago for my regular appointment, and there's a woman there that I see very often. We're on the same cycle. And she's actually probably about to start the clinical trial that I'm on. And she said that somebody had said to her, "Are you crazy? Why are you doing a clinical trial? Just do chemo. Why would you do that to yourself?" And so we had this whole discussion, and I'm not making this up. Like, I know it's just a week before this conference, but we had this whole discussion about why you do clinical trials. And obviously there are a few reasons. We would love to help, to have new discoveries to help other cancer patients. That's great. It's wonderful to be able to do that and to know that we're helping in that process. But let's be honest, we're not really doing it with this greater altruistic motive. We're doing it because we hope that it'll work. You don't generally come to the clinical trial phase until you've tried other things. So there is a sense of desperation. There is a sense of, okay, this hasn't worked, I need something that will. And the clinical trials give that hope. There's the hope that you're going to find the one drug that's going to make the difference. There's also the hope that it'll be easier than chemotherapy. As I said, I had a really, really difficult time on chemo. I didn't respond well to it, and the drugs didn't help really control the side effects. So being able to do something that can treat the cancer and that can still provide me with quality of life is huge. The other thing is, and this is something I've discussed with my doctors, we don't talk about cure, but we do talk about cancer being a chronic illness. So one of the things that Dr. Oza has said to me is, look, we'll treat it, and so long as it works, we'll keep treating it with whatever we're doing. And if it stops working, we'll do something else. But there's always something else, and that's the beauty of the clinical trial, is there's something else to try. And if it doesn't work, I can go back on chemo. It's there. And the conventional medicine isn't going away. But the clinical trials offer an alternative that might be a little bit better, that might work, that might help other people. So it provides hope, which you can't go through this journey without hope. Like, it's just not possible. Because if you don't have hope and you despair, the whole mind-body connection and all of that, and I'm not very eloquent on that topic, but needless to say that I do believe in it. And if you don't have hope, then I don't think that your results are going to be as good. So clinical trials do provide hope. And for me personally, I believe that I had very strong faith in the PARP inhibitor. I was waiting for it, as I said, for 2.5 years. I'm on it and I'm responding to it. And given everything that's gone on, to be able to go about my day-to-day, to take 3 pills at night, to have very minor side effects, is an amazing thing. And you guys are the ones who provide that. So if you think about it on a personal perspective, and I know oftentimes you're either in the lab or crunching numbers or doing what you're doing, but on a very personal level, what you guys are doing is providing hope to cancer patients. And hope is what increases survival, in my opinion. So, having said all of that, I just wanted to say to all of you, thank you